In this video, we'll be going over the Anagrams interview question in JavaScript. My name is Larry, and this is Digital Logic. To get started, you'll need to download the project from GitHub. A link is in the description below. I've also provided a linked introduction video to the series, which will walk you through setting up your development environment. With that out of the way, let's get started. So I've already got the project open in IntelliJ, so I'll pump the project browser and then open the anagrams.js file. For this challenge, you need to write a function that will determine if one string is an anagram of another. An anagram is a string that is formed by rearranging the letters of another string. Make sure to ignore capitalization, punctuation, and spaces. Once you have a solution that you're ready to test, open up a terminal. In VS Code, the shortcut is Command tilde. And then type npm test anagrams. And then press enter. And as you can see, the current solution is failing the test. The testing framework will test any function that you include in the module.exports. So you can provide multiple solutions, and the testing framework will test all of them. If you want to attempt to solve this problem without any hints, then pause the video now. One possible way to solve this challenge would be to sort the characters within each string first, and then do the comparison. Another possible solution would be to create a character map for each string. The character map would keep track of how many times each character appears within that string. So go ahead and pause the video now and try to come up with a solution to this challenge. When you're ready to continue, come back here and we'll walk through several different solutions. Welcome back. So I'll start by renaming this method to sorted, and then make sure the export name stays the same. And then I'll delete the return false statement. And then create a new constant, copy a equals STRA dot to lowercase dot match. I want to pass in a regex. I'll select only the characters I want to keep. So I'll use a set selector a-z 0-9. And then make sure to include the global search flag. Match will return an array of single character strings. So call .sort to sort the array. And then call .join and then pass in an empty string as a separator. This will take our array of strings and join them together into a single string. Now let's do the same thing to string b. Create a new constant, copy b equals strb dot to lowercase. And since I used match in the last statement, this time I'll use replace. With replace, I need to pass in a regex to select all the characters that I don't want. The /w meta character selector will select any regular word character A through Z, 0 through 9, and underscore. Capitalizing the W will invert the selection, but that'll still let the underscore character pass through the filter. I can use a set selector and then add the underscore to it. Another option would be to specify a-z 0-9 within the set selector and then negating it. This will have the effect of selecting anything that is not these characters. Both of these options do essentially the same thing, so it's your choice. And then don't forget to include the global search flag so that the entire string is searched. The second parameter, the replace method, is where we define the replacement value, and for this I'll pass in an empty string. Now call split to split up the string into an array of single character strings. And then call sort, followed by join to join the array of strings back into a single string. Now we just need to compare copy A to copy B. We could create a for loop and iterate through the characters one at a time, or we could just use string comparison. So return copy A equals copy B. Save the file, and then open up the console to view the test results. And it's passing the test. In this solution, we sorted the characters within the strings first, and then did the comparison. In the next solution, we'll create a character map to keep track of how many times each character appears within the string. So let's start out by creating a new function, and I'm going to name it CharMap. And I'm going to create a helper function to transform the string into a character map. This way I don't have to repeat the same logic for both strings. And I'll name this function toCharMap. and it takes a single string, and then return str.toLowerCase .match. And then I'll pass in a set selector a-z 0-9. And then make sure to set the global search flag. And now call reduce. Reduce will take the array and reduce it into a single value or object. The first parameter to reduce is the reducing function, and the first parameter to that function is the accumulator, which in this case I'll call map. The second parameter is the next string within the array. The second parameter to the reduce function allows us to define an initial value for the accumulator. If you don't provide one, then the first item in the array is used. I want to reduce this array into a single hash map, so for the initial value of the accumulator, I'll pass in a new map. Now inside the reduce function, I need to take the next character C and add it to the hash map. So map.set, the key will be the character C. The value will depend on if this hash map already contains this key. So map.has, and then pass in the variable C. And then add in the ternary operator, and then map.get C +1, :1. The question mark is the ternary operator, and you can think of it as an inline if-else statement. If the map contains the key C, then retrieve its value and add 1 to it, else return 1. Finally, we need to return a reference to the map object through the reducing function, so add return in front of map.set. This works because the set method will return a reference to the map object. Our helper function is now complete, so let's put it to use. Back in the CharMap function, create a new constant, map a equals to CharMap string a. Then create another constant, map b equals to CharMap string b. If the maps don't contain the same number of keys, then there's no way that these strings could be anagrams of each other. So let's check for that first. If map_a.size is not equal to map_b.size, then return false. Now we need to iterate through the character map to check if they both have the same character count for each letter. So create a new for loop, constant, and I'm going to use array destructuring here. C is the key or the letter within the hash map, and then count is the number of times that it appeared within the string of map A. If map_b.get C is not equal to count, then return false. Then finally, if we make it through the for loop without ever returning false, then return true. Make sure to add this function to the module.export list. Save the file, and then open up the terminal to check the test results. And it is passing the test. For the next solution, I'll use an IntArray as the character map. So create a new function named IntArray. And then create a new constant, CharMap equals, I need an array of 26 integers all initialized to the value of 0. There are several different ways to do this in JavaScript, but I'm going to use the array constructor and then pass the value 26 as the only parameter. This will not create an array of 26 elements in it. All it does is set the length property to 26. So to finish the job, call .fill and then pass in 0 as the only parameter. Be careful with using the fill method. Only use it to fill in primitive values within an array. If you were to pass in an object, you're going to get an array filled with references to the same object. Now create a new constant, copy a equals stra.toLowerCase .replace. And for the regex, I'll pass in a set selector, negate a-z. This solution will only work with the characters A through Z. None of the test cases includes numbers, so it's not a big deal. And then of course, don't forget to include the global search flag. And for the replacement value, I'll pass in an empty string. Now create a for loop, constant C of copy A. The for of loop requires an iterable object. The iterator returned by the string object will iterate through each character in the string one at a time. So CharMap at c.charcode at 0 minus a.charcode at 0. The charcode at method will return a number representing the UTF-16 code character. Subtracting the character code for the letter A will give us an index within the char map. Now increment the integer at this index. So at this point, our char map will have an accurate tally for each character within string A. Now create a new constant, copy B equals strb.toLowerCase.replace. And then pass in the same regex as we did for copy A. And then an empty string for the replacement value. Now create another for loop, constant C of copy B. And then char map at c.charcode at 0 minus a.charcode at 0. And then decrement the counter at this position. So if string A is an anagram of string B, then the char map should be filled with nothing but zeros. So let's create another for loop to check that. Constant I of char map. If I is not equal to 0, then return false. And then if we make it through the for loop without ever returning false, return true. Add this function to the module exports, and then save the file, and then open up the console to check the test results, and it's passing the test. So a few important points about these solutions. The match method will return null if the regex does not match anything within the string. And if you attempt to call a method like sort on null, an exception is thrown. The replace method is a little bit more lenient in this regard. If we were to pass in a string with nothing but punctuation, replace would give us an empty string. And then calling split, sort, and join on an empty string will just give us an empty string. None of the test conditions trigger this edge case, but it is something to keep in mind whenever using either of these methods in a real-world application. Anyway, that is it for this video. If you like this video, then please like, share, subscribe. If you want to support the creation of these videos, then check out my Patreon page. A link is in the description, and I'll see you in the next video.